All right, friends, we're no longer calling them narcissists. We're calling them petty tyrants. Here's why. Before I get into it, I will introduce myself. My name is Hannah. I am a lot of things. I don't always introduce myself on videos, but I am trying to remember to do it more. I am a manifestation coach, spiritual teacher, energy healer, former police officer of almost 20 years, divorce and family mediator. And basically, on this channel, I just teach you about law of assumption, manifestation, from a very practical, grounded, healthy perspective. And for those of you, a lot of my teachings center around family court and contested divorce and child custody battles because, first of all, I have personal experience in that area. And secondly, I think because it's so challenging, if you can master your spiritual correction through in this field, you can do anything. And the term petty tyrant comes from Carlos Castaneda's book, The Fire from Within, Chapter 2, and his shaman, I can't say it, Don Juan, says the same thing. He says, if you can overcome the petty tyrant rite of passage, which is a necessary function of any, seer, anybody who's on the path to spiritual awakening will encounter a petty tyrant. Now, how long it lasts, and probably more than one, and in different ways depending on where you are in your journey. But it is a necessary component to learn to be unconditional. Okay, and what do I mean by that? So I will preface this by saying that a lot of people, especially women, get this whole spirituality idea really, really wrong. And what we think is being good and spiritual, actually it makes us, is like blood in the water for, we used to use the term narcissist, now we're using petty tyrant, because they are looking for somebody who doesn't have strong boundaries, who is reactive, because reactivity keeps the victim of a petty tyrant stuck and provides fodder for the petty tyrant to just continue their reign of tyranny. So, in the book, The Fire from Within, Carlos, the author, talks about forbearance, timing, two other qualities. Shoot, I forget what they are, but it doesn't really matter because the key here with the petty tyrant is to know that they that it's not possible to reason with this quote unquote person. And I say person because here's the thing. We all know that there are people in this world who are basically sleepwalking through life. They might appear to be awake, okay? Maybe they even have very sort of like intelligent professional jobs, like maybe they're a surgeon or an engineer, or I don't know, like something like could be really good at math. But when it comes to common sense and emotional intelligence and spiritual maturity, that piece is not there. And if we're really honest with ourselves, we can acknowledge that they, are not, they don't have the capacity to hear you if you try to speak that language to them. For example, imagine somebody is colorblind and they have never seen the colors red or green. To them, red and green both appear brown, the same as dirt. So if they're looking at a red rose with a green stem growing out of the soil, it will all appear brown to them. And no matter what words you use, even if you could convince them that other people see the rose differently than they do, like let's say they've been identified by a doctor as being colorblind, they have an expert telling them that you see differently than 99.9% of the world. Even if they would acknowledge that, they still can't, they are incapable of seeing the colors, okay? And no words that you can use could replace the ability to see those colors, all right? The only thing that would change would be for them to put on those color blindness glasses and actually see the colors, to experience it. And you can't do that, okay? Your words can't do that, your energy can't do that. Actually, maybe your energy potentially can do that. I was going to say only God can do that, but when you align your energy with God, then that outer intention can naturally take place. All right, excuse me. So, number one is stop trying to reason with them. Stop trying to explain with them. Be a impeccable manager of your energy. All right? If you think about all of the buckets you pour your precious energy into and make a list of them, and then examine which ones are really worth it. Where are you actually getting a return on your investment? All right. I'm not even talking about spending energy, the way we spend money or spend time. From now on, you're no longer spending anything, you're only investing. Okay. If you were to stop pouring, leaking your energy into like 90% of the things that you do, you would have a lot more to work with. All right. It's just like time. Like, let's say somebody has a goal or a project. Okay. If they're getting distracted and focusing their time on scrolling through Instagram, or I don't know what, getting into petty disagreements with people that are unproductive, then that is taking away from their availability of time, focus, energy, whatever you want to call it, waking hours, to this project or goal. And so it's the same way with our personal energy. All right, excuse me. Speaking of waking hours. And so that's number one. And an example I thought of recently is, so, all right, so people who are asleep, sleepwalking. If you think about the movie The Matrix and the fact that the Matrix can use humans who are basically sleepwalking through life, who are operating at a very low level of consciousness as vessels for the agents, essentially, right? Like, um, what's that saying? If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. If you think about, so in Reality Transurfing by Vadim Zealand, he talks about these energetic pendulums and how people can get caught up in these energetic pendulums and will literally say later, I don't know what came over me. And it's because they were asleep at the wheel. They were not present. They were not they were not drawing their soul into their body. They weren't where their feet are. Sometimes when a person is under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and you look into their eyes and they're like stoned and there's just nobody there, right? That is actually very dangerous, because when they leave the stage of their life, so to speak, it creates a vacancy where an evil spirit could take over, essentially. In Hebrew, it's called a dibuk. Oh my gosh, it's super creepy. You can Google it, Dybbuk, dibuk, and and can make them do something that they wouldn't normally do, that can like really mess up the rest of their life, right? Like go to prison for it, God forbid. I will tell you, I mentioned in my introduction, I was a cop, and I had many instances where I had to arrest people that were not bad people, but they were not conscious, like of their, I don't know, they weren't consciously aware, and something would happen and they would get triggered and reactive, caught up in this pendulum, and do something incredibly like not good, and then they'd come out of it and they'd be like, oh my gosh, what came over me? And it, I mean, you felt terrible arresting them, because you're like, they're not some evil person, they just got swept up. Anyways, so imagine if Neo in the Matrix tried to reason with the agents, and he was like, no, really, let me explain to you why what you're doing is wrong, and there's this whole other world and blah blah blah. Like it would be ridiculous, and he would also be dead, right? Also, if he tried to fight the game fight them at his level, as at his current level, that would also be completely ineffectual, because the consciousness that created the problem cannot be the same consciousness that fixes the problem. Or as Albert Einstein said, you can't fix a problem with the same consciousness that created it. Okay, so hopefully we're starting to get an idea of what these petty tyrants are. They are completely asleep. No matter what they say, which can be infuriating because it's nonsensical, the translation is always, who do you think you are? You do something that triggers them, and it's usually by asserting your own right, asserting your own individuality, asserting your own right to have a voice, opening up that throat chakra. And that is threatening to them. For whatever reason, they need you to stay small and controlled so they can feel safe. So let's say, I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, let's say they're friends with you, and you both work for some soul-sucking corporate job, and you come up with an idea, a really great business idea, to and eventually, excuse me, sorry, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. You come up with some great business idea that's going to get you out of the corporate slavery. And all of a sudden, they are triggered because your light is highlighting, by contrast, their stagnation. Oh, this is the same exact thing that happens, by the way, when a bunch of people are like bar buddies, and then one of them decides to stop drinking, and some of the old barflies are like, "Oh yeah, who do you think you are? You think you're better than us?" And they basically like terrorize the person who decided to make a healthy choice for their life. Also, I always talk about this movie if you watch my videos. Renfield, Nicolas Cage. God, he's like, oh, plays such a good Dracula. But Dracula is the epitome of a petty tyrant in this movie. So, so they don't want you to grow, okay? Because if you grow, then by contrast, it just points out how stuck they are. And they were afraid to change, afraid to grow, because that involves the risk of quote unquote failure, which is completely unacceptable to them. Again, so if you know anything about narcissism, and you know that the root of it is shame, and it's shame at the fact that they're not perfect, that they're not God, because we are God, but this is like the egoic God that wants to be God, that wants to be perfect, that isn't the real self, which actually is a piece of God, which is so ironic. Oh my gosh, why am I so yawny today? Oh, excuse me. Okay, so we know we're not going to reason with them. We know that they are totally coming from a place of fear and insecurity, and that no matter what logic, which we know isn't logic, they're putting on their nonsense emails and everything else. The translation is, I am triggered. Who do you think you are? Right? So what do we do? What you've been doing up until now, if you're watching this video, most likely has not worked. So number one, you are going to pause and exercise forbearance. All right. A lot of the time, all you have to do is let them show somebody who they are and provide an environment in order for them to do that. And that's it. Very often that is just the case. If you've seen the movie Man in the High Castle, there are many petty tyrants in that movie. And the main character, Juliana Crane, she practices Aikido, which is a martial art in which you use your opponent's strength and size against him, kind of like in David versus Goliath. And there's a scene in which there's an angry man charging at her, and she's like, a third of his size, and if she tries to come up, like, you see all these movies with these tiny petite little women are fighting men, and like doing so effectively. And it's just completely unrealistic. However, with Aikido, this would be the one way because, excuse me, when he charges at her, she does a little maneuver and basically pulls him towards her, which is unexpected, right? And he just charges right over the bridge, and that's that. That's the end of it. So this is the petty tyrant structure, and if you read The Fire from Within, it is so beautifully illustrated in chapter 2 how Don Juan handles his own petty tyrant. But so you have to be patient. You have to exercise forbearance. You can't react and try to meet them head on because you will just get smacked down. Like, I'm also thinking of the movie Cool Hand Luke. Like, he just can't figure out to not trying to like head on, face down this incredible force that he's just not going to win that way. You have to be a lot more clever and strategic. If you know the story of Queen Esther and King Ahasuerus, Vashti was the wrong approach to King Ahasuerus. He was a petty tyrant. Queen Esther, she had the right approach. Okay, we want to be Queen Esther here. This is always the way. You always want to be clever about it. Oh my gosh. Oh, okay. I need to like go take a nap. Where am I going with all this? Petty tyrants. Okay. Enjoy the process. Enjoy every moment. You are going through the motions, pretending, right? Like, you're not angry and bitter and fuming as you're going about your whatever it is you have to do, while you're under the illusion of the rule of this tyrant. You're just going about it perfectly happy, biding your time because you know you're going to be victorious. Timing is key. You know what? I would say just stop this video right here because I'm about to end it because I really didn't mean to ramble this long anyways. And just go, if you have Spotify Premium, the book, it's included. The audiobook is included in Premium. Just skip straight to chapter 2. There are many other videos on YouTube where people talk about this petty tyrant archetype, and it's amazing. And check out any of those. And then let me know in the comments. And that is one other thing I will say. I always forget to do this in my videos. If you are getting value from this channel, please hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like. It really helps push this content out into the algorithm and helps other people benefit from this wisdom. So that is it. Thank you for watching. I love you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.